So, ladies and gentlemen, the Buffalo Bills are set to face off against the 1-2 Baltimore Ravens this Sunday for another edition of some primetime Sunday night football. And I know all of Bills Mafia is pounding their chests. We are 3-0, but again, we see the national media start to move the goalposts, and yet again, we have another litmus test ahead of us. Now, on today's episode, obviously, I'm going to be giving you my full preview, prediction, keys to victory, final score prediction, and the whole nine. But first, we are going to be welcoming on my good friend Bobby Trossett, otherwise known as Bobby Baltimore, a Baltimore Ravens creator, to unpack everything and anything that we need to know from behind enemy lines. And then afterwards, I'll dive into all the juicy stuff. So do me a favor, like this video. We want 500 like buttons smashed on this episode today, and subscribe to the channel and turn on bell notifications. We want 50,000 subscribers on this channel by the time the NFL season is over with. I guarantee you at least 40% of you watching haven't subscribed, so be a part of that milestone with us, boys. Without further ado, let's welcome Bobby Baltimore.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, each and every single week, I have to bring on a representative that the Buffalo Bills just so happen to be facing. And when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens, I could not think of a better person to call than my good friend Bobby Baltimore. How you doing, man?
Damn, good to see you, dude. It's going to be a hell of a night, I would think. Prime time in Baltimore, two of the best in the AFC. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll be honest with you. This AFC North has not turned out like how I think a lot of us would have expected. I mean, I could see why some people could make the argument, don't sleep on a Mike Tomlin-led Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. But if you were to tell me that the Bengals were sitting in the absolute basement right now, sitting at 0-3, obviously the Baltimore Ravens certainly had their struggles, at least through the first 3 weeks of the season, and then exact same thing with the rest of the division. It's wild so far, man. This year has been very weird.
For sure. Then again, this is kind of like familiar territory for the Bengals, right? Like limping right out of the starting block. So certainly not ready to write them off yet. But I'll tell you what, if I'm Josh Allen and the Bills, I'm making sure right from the jump to test Baltimore secondary, because I watched that Monday night game. I watched that slaughter job. I mean, it was just Doug Peterson's got to be on the hot seat as a result. I saw a storyline, at least on the national airwaves, questioning at the very least, should the Jaguars bench Trevor Lawrence? So what your Bills did to that city, to that town, to that organization, pretty significant. But look, the Ravens are in the midst of transition. Kind of similar to when Philly made their Super Bowl run a couple years ago and then changed both coordinators. There was just a difficulty to find consistent cohesion the following season. Now, Ravens didn't lose both coordinators, but they lost what many feel like is the next great mind, and that's Mike Macdonald, who would have been a shoo-in to replace a lot of different guys, which is why you got a lot of different interviews. Ends up with Seattle. They're off to a roaring start. He's doing tremendously over there, and I think a lot of people in Ravens Nation are feeling very bittersweet about that. Because you know how it goes when you've had a head coach that's been around for over a decade and hasn't gotten to the big one since the only time he's been there, which was over 10 years ago. It starts to get hot. The target starts to get wider and bigger on your back. And I'm talking about, of course, John Harbaugh. So anyway, to get back to sort of the point here, if I'm Josh Allen and company, the way that he was a distributor on Monday night, the way that he's just so incredibly high-flying and surgical in the pocket, I'd be testing out the middle part of the field from an intermediate passing game with the tight ends, and then I'd also be picking on different parts of the secondary, because the Ravens have not proven to hold up for 4 quarters in those 2 areas. They have through 3, but the 4th has been a major, major Achilles heel for them.
Very interesting. And I mean, that right there is perfect, because what I wanted to do is really unpack some of the weaknesses, because I wouldn't have thought that you guys would have started off 1-2. I mean, first off, that like millimeter of a toe being out of bounds against Kansas City had to be a heartbreaker for a lot of the Ravens fans going into it. But I mean, certainly a very impressive win against a Dallas Cowboys defense. I do need to ask as well, because I understand that Baltimore lost out on some pretty key contributors on the offensive line as well. And at the beginning of the season, I was under the impression that, I think that there are going to be some growing pains. Maybe it's just going to take some time for this new unit to start gaining some chemistry. But what you have seen through the first 3 weeks, have you seen that chemistry start to build within that unit? Or is it still a concern moving forward into week 4 against this Buffalo Bills defense?
It's definitely a concern. They took a nice step in Dallas, but anybody that's watched just an inkling, whether it's highlights or not, of Cowboys defensive football this year would tell you that you probably shouldn't measure up your it's not a measuring stick game for anybody's offensive line when they're going up against what Dallas's defensive front is this year. And that's just, to be quite frank, they're just pitiful. They really
Yeah.
are. And
Mhm.
the Ravens ran all over them.
Mhm.
Now that said, they had a fourth quarter collapse. So, when you look at the final score, it wasn't exactly indicative of how dominant the Ravens were in the trenches, offensively speaking, running for, I think, 274 is what they finished with on the ground, and they just had their way. Now, with that said, weeks 1 and weeks 2 really kind of showed some of the vulnerabilities on the right-hand side of the line that you're alluding to. And I'll tell you what, if I'm Von Miller, if I'm Rousseau, if I'm Oliver, and just the defensive strategizing this week in Buffalo, I'm making sure that the right hand side of the Ravens offensive line has to prove itself on national television, because there's a guy named Daniel Fa'alele. He is a developmental guard, meaning he was drafted to be a tackle. He's 6'8", over 380 pounds, and they've asked him to go from an experiment over the summer at guard to actually, wait a second, we're actually going to start him for the first 3 games at right guard. And we're going to ask him to deal with Chris Jones. We're going to ask him to deal with Max Crosby. And then luckily, not a lot of dogs defensively, like I said, in Dallas. So he took a nice step, particularly in the run game. But they've lost a lot of pieces. John Simpson was their left guard. He goes to New York now to protect Aaron Rodgers. Same thing with Morgan Moses at right tackle. And then Kevin Zeitler at right guard leaves in free agency and goes to Detroit. That's been the biggest drop off at right guard. And to me, that's the biggest question mark moving forward after 3 weeks. It's, can this line not only hold up in pass pro, but are they good enough on the right-hand side to truly move men so that Derrick Henry can do what he does generationally well? And so a couple big question marks I've already mentioned with the
Yeah.
secondary and the offensive line. I'll tell you this. I don't think the Ravens should be planning on getting in a shootout with Josh Allen and the Bills. That's not their game, and I don't see them winning a football game in that type of manner, not being able to control the tempo and dictate the time of possession and things of that nature.
Got it. Got it. And I mean, I'll tell you what, like I reflect back on the week 1 matchup for the Buffalo Bills, and obviously we play a quarterback like Kyler Murray, who's going to be a threat, especially when it comes into being able to move outside of the pocket, make plays with his legs, and now enter a Baltimore Ravens team that is at home. I would say very similar quarterback. Obviously, Lamar is leaps and bounds better than Kyler here, but this game is ultimately about matchups. Like, what matchups are the Baltimore Ravens going to be able to have over the Buffalo Bills? I know it's early, but based off of everything you have seen from the Buffalo Bills defensively, what matchup are you absolutely salivating over? And what matchup do you really think that this Baltimore Ravens team is going to weigh in on Sunday?
Yeah, so you're asking where I think the Ravens might match up well with the Bills defense?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, look, I think Zay Flowers has shown that he has he's got some dog in him for sure. Is he a number 1 on other teams? No. And
Yeah.
there are days, to be honest with you, there are days where I'm wondering whether or not, Zay's a number 1 here in Baltimore just because of their tight end play.
Yeah.
But for the most part, and I think back to a key third down conversion when the game was not necessarily wrapped up yet in Dallas, and the Cowboys were on an unbelievable comeback tour, and the Ravens were in the midst of just a collapse. And Zay had a special teams gaffe. He didn't recover the onside kick, and he didn't use his body to kind of shield the football. And as we all know, the football tends to bounce in awkward and weird and unpredictable ways,
Always.
giving the Cowboys life at that point. Well, a couple minutes later, they go back to him on third down to essentially ice the game before Lamar took it himself on a keeper. And I thought to myself, man, that just showed some moxie right there. That showed some short memory ability, some mental toughness. and obviously some ability to kind of like just run a really silky route on the right hand side, use his body to make sure that catch is caught, that football is caught. And so, anyway, long story short, I like Zay Flowers against most secondaries. I know you
Mhm.
got some athletes within yours. There's no doubt about that. And I was thrilled to see Damar Hamlin get that interception on Monday Night Football. The
Oh,
football
yeah,
gods work in really, really mysterious, and in this case,
for sure.
strong and just like magical ways. But
Mhm.
I want to see Zay test Buffalo's secondary vertically. And
Yep.
I think if there's one area that Lamar needs to continue to show on national audiences that
Mhm.
he is elite in, it's the vertical passing attack. It's outside the numbers and it's the deep ball game. And if there was one sort of blemish, it's funny to say it, on an MVP season last year for him, it
Yeah.
was that. It was the deep ball game. And so I think if you can test Buffalo early there and keep them honest and then pound Derrick Henry, and have Justice Hill in there for different looks on third down and whatnot, and get some push in the trenches, then I think this is going to be a good game. In no way do I think this isn't going to be a good game. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, game plan wise, if I'm the Ravens, it feels nightmarish to get into a shootout with the Bills. That's not their game.
Yeah. Yeah, man, most definitely. And you know what? I always have a special place in my heart for the Ravens and even the Chiefs, surprisingly enough, because as a Buffalo Bills fan, we have been hearing all off season. It's like, oh my God, you don't even have a number one wide receiver. And you look at teams like the Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs, and people were acting like this model is unproven. It's never been tested to be true that it can go deep into the playoffs. And if you have a solid tight end play, a solid slot receiver, a mobile quarterback, somewhat decent offensive line play, you are right in there, like at the moment. And that's exactly how this Ravens team is built. And that's what's made them successful throughout the past couple of years. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. As far as everything you have seen, what is your final score prediction for Sunday? And give me a hot take right before we let you go.
I think, like I've kind of alluded to it a couple times here, I think it's going to be high scoring, but
Mhm.
at the same time, if it ends up being one of those like barn burner, insane, like first to 40 type of, I'm watching
Shit.
Monday night and I texted our guy Zbot and I said, first to 40 on Sunday night wins. It's just like you get that feeling coming off, and the
Yeah.
Ravens, comfortably put up, points in Dallas, obviously, and then Buffalo just dismantled Jacksonville. So I guess that was sort of a in the moment type of thought. But I do still think that both teams are going to be in the 30s here. I'll go 34-31 Buffalo on the road
Got it.
Sunday night. It's going to be a blackout, by the way. It's going to be
Yeah.
absolutely lit the hell up in Baltimore. So look
Yeah.
forward to that. Hot take. Oh, man, you got me on the spot here. Let's see.
Yeah.
Hot take. Okay, how about this? The Ravens will deal Mark Andrews prior to the deadline.
Damn. See,
He
that's
is
funny
off
you bring that.
to an
See, that's funny.
extremely slow start.
See, that's funny you bring that up. I'm not sure if he's still getting some lingering effects from the injury he had last year, or was it the car accident a couple of months ago? Like and I mean, now it's Isaiah Likely, and I'm fine with Isaiah Likely. And I went to Coastal Carolina University, so I have a
I
special
forgot
place in my
about
heart for
that.
him
Yeah,
as
yeah, yeah.
well. But I mean, he looks almost uncharacteristic this year.
Yeah, I think you just kind of like summarized it well. There's could be
Yeah.
a multitude of factors. Could be the aftermath of last year's ankle injury from the hip drop tackle. He
Yeah.
rushed back to be ready for their run. Didn't end up playing until the AFC title game and really was a non-factor in the title game. So hopefully he got a full season of rehab, you would think, but when you rush it, you just never know. He's got a lot of NFL miles under his tires. And then not only the car accident, but there was a separate type of injury as well. I'm forgetting what the designation was just because it's been super under the wraps. So count three things,
Yeah.
three areas that have sort of plagued Mark on top of Harbaugh coming up on Monday after the Dallas game. And there was a question, hey, why did Mark only play 21 snaps? And he's like, oh, it was mostly just a usage thing in terms of like what our game plan was. We were going heavy. It was a heavy run game, this, that, and the other. It really kind of downplaying the significance of not having Mark out there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, that's interesting. So anyway, clearly they have one of the deepest tight end rooms in the entire league. You would
Yeah.
hear about Charlie Kohler on just about any other team, but you don't because he's tight end 3.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess that'll be my hot take. I don't know if I truly believe it, but the
Yeah.
more that he becomes sort of secondary, role wise, the more maybe it'll be an interesting conversation. And what popped up in my mind is that there was a Colts writer who was actually just spending some time on it yesterday. It popped up on my timeline, and all of Indianapolis is like, "Yeah, let's deal. Come on,
Mark Andrews.
we'll give you this, that, and the other for Mark." And I'm like, that could be kind of helpful.
I'll
So
tell you what, I feel like the Colts need a hell of a lot more than Mark Andrews. That's for
yeah, I
sure.
was gonna
All
say, well,
right.
they could start with putting Joe Flacco as QB1. How about that? That might work
Yeah.
out for him.
Yeah, I think so. Well, folks, once again, we want to thank Bobby Baltimore for coming on. Guys, his channel is actually linked right in the description. Highly recommend that you go on ahead and you check out his content this week. He's going to be breaking down this game in depth for the remainder couple of days. Definitely recommend to go check him out. And Bobby, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Of course, Dan. I got a bunch of upstate boys, Western New York boys
I
coming
love it.
down to Baltimore this weekend. So I'm going to be
Awesome.
very much entrenched in this game in
Yeah.
a number of ways. And I appreciate you having me on, dude.
So, giant shout out to Bobby Baltimore for hopping on the channel. Surprisingly enough, he has picked the Buffalo Bills to win this game in a very high scoring endeavor. But truly, time will tell. Now, folks, right before we dive into the specifics, if you are looking for a place to watch the game this Sunday evening, there is no better place than Club Bud Light at 34 Rush over at Batavia Downs. So, folks, they have some of the largest televisions you've ever seen in your entire life. There's food specials, there's drink specials, inspired by Thurman Thomas himself, and they're having these crazy sponsored giveaways at halftime and even after the game. I highly recommend that you head on over to Club Bud Light at 34 Rush to watch the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens this weekend. It is the only place to watch Buffalo Bills football in 2024. We got to start off with Lamar Jackson. Obviously, the quarterback always likes starting off with the lead passer of each and every single team that we face off against. And we're familiar with Lamar Jackson, back-to-back MVP, and he has the talent to really break this game in half. Now, as mentioned before, this Baltimore Ravens team has been struggling for the beginning of the season, losing to the Kansas City Chiefs by a millimeter of a toe, losing to the Las Vegas Raiders unexpectedly, but then they ended up picking up some sort of steam against the Dallas Cowboys last week. But looking at what Lamar Jackson has done already, folks, he's 59 for 90. That's good enough for a 65.6% completion rate. He's averaging about 7.8 yards per attempt. We all know that Lamar Jackson is not somebody that's necessarily going to stretch the field. He is not a deep ball quarterback. And quite frankly, based off of everything I have seen so far from this season, he only has 12 attempts outside of the numbers past 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. He is going to be married right into the middle of the field, short passes up in the middle. His strength is not throwing outside of the numbers. I think we know that already. He's recorded 3 touchdowns and 1 interception in the air, and he's only had 2 turnover-worthy plays already. So he takes care of the football for the most part. What's shocking about this is that he's holding onto the ball for quite a bit of time, 2.96 seconds time to throw. This offensive line, which we will get into later on in this video, probably has to do with it since he's running for his life. He's having to evade the pocket, make plays with his legs. That could certainly go into this, but still very uncharacteristic. He's only been sacked about 3 times, regardless of how bad his offensive line has been playing. And he's going to rush the football. We already know that. He's going to scramble. That's why he's so dynamic. He has 35 rush attempts for 255 yards, 7.3 yards per attempt, and he's caused over 9 missed tackles in only 3 weeks of football. Now, diving in a bit deeper, I always like looking at passing concepts, and I also like looking at pressure, how these quarterbacks perform in all of these different metrics. Starting off with passing concepts, this is really not much of a play action team, surprisingly enough. Even when you have a running back like Derrick Henry, these numbers are surprisingly low for me. But when they are in play action, and granted, there's only been 20 plays all season, he's 16 for 20 at 80%. Non-play action, 43 for 70 at 61.4%. And his screen game, which is also pretty crazy. They only have 15 screen attempts all season where he's very efficient as well. Pressure is very interesting, all right? When he's kept clean, he's completing 68% of his passes. That's the same for just about each and every single person, each and every single QB in the league. You're obviously better when you're kept clean. Pressure, He's 8 for 15, 53.3% of the time. And when he's blitzed, for the love of God, do not blitz Lamar Jackson. He destroys the blitz. He is 24 for 27. So whatever we do, the Buffalo Bills do not need to be taking anybody extra out of coverage, or otherwise players like Isaiah Likely and also Zay Flowers are going to absolutely murder us. Now we have a good understanding of Lamar Jackson, and so we have to move over to his overall offense right now. And when you look at this Baltimore Ravens offense, even though they are 1-2, this offense is still wildly efficient. Right now, they're scoring 23.7 points per game. That is good enough for 11th in the league. Yards per game, they are dominating, folks. They have 430.3 yards per game. That's on average. That is first in the NFL by an absolute long shot, by the way. Yards per play, they are number 1 in the overall league. And third, fourth down conversion rate, red zone conversion rate, they are all in the top 10. And that largely has to do with their rush attack. And the rush attack is what we are going to anticipate Baltimore to be doing all Sunday night. Number 1 in the league for yards per rush, 5.9 yards, 34.7 rush attempts per game. That's 4th in the league, and 203 rush yards per game. That is good enough for 2nd. And obviously, the heart of the rush attack is going right to Derrick Henry. Now, we remember Derrick Henry. I'm going to list off all of his stats right here, but I want to put to bed a narrative that a lot of Bills fans have in their head. Outside of the first game we faced with Derrick Henry when he was in Tennessee, he rushed for over like 130, 140 yards. But ever since then, Sean McDermott has done an incredible job at neutralizing this threat. Past couple of matchups, Henry has only put up 50, 60, sometimes 70 yards. And the only reason he ended up getting a lot of those was based off of one big-time run. I feel like all of us are obsessed with that meme where he stiff-armed Josh Norman into absolute oblivion a couple of years ago. But for the most part, Sean McDermott and this defense has done a great job at being able to virtually take him out of the game outside of a play or two. Even with all that being said, 56 attempts for 281 yards, and his yards per average rush is at 5 yards and 4 touchdowns collected. Now, I did make a take on this during this offseason that I started seeing a slow regression in Derrick Henry's yards per average per rush attempt. Sort of yet again, into 2024, it has gone down 0.1 in yards per carry. But he's still an absolute tank. He's averaging 3.5 yards after contact. So he's going to be their guy. Not many receiving attempts for this running back. That's going to have to be Justice Hill, who is more of their receiving back. So they're really telling us exactly what they're doing based off of who we see in the backfield here. Now, next up, we're going to have to go into the Baltimore Ravens pass game. Obviously, we've already established that Lamar Jackson is going to be passing the football in the short, in between the numbers side of this offense. He's not going to be stretching the field outside of the numbers. He only has 9 attempts where he has not been very good, but we need to watch out for receivers like Zay Flowers and then also tight end Isaiah Likely. So now Isaiah Likely has been an absolute threat over at the tight end game. He is even a bigger threat when it comes into run blocking. So I'll be completely honest with you. I think that this attack for the Ravens offense is largely going to be on the ground, where the Buffalo Bills, for the most part this season, have been, I'd say, relatively in between the pack, or middle of the pack, rather. As far as keys for the Buffalo Bills defense to being able to maintain this Baltimore Ravens offensive attack, particularly on the ground, look, this is going to have to be a massive game from our front seven. Whether or not that it's Derrick Henry attempting to run in between the tackles or even getting off to the outside, we need some athleticism from our defensive ends, and we need Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver to really be able to punch that away, take it out of the equation. Linebackers included. We need Dorian Williams, and we need Balin Spector to be able to make their tackles, including Morrow. We know that it's going to happen. Lamar Jackson is going to scramble quite a bit since the offensive line has not been doing a great job at protecting him. So these linebackers, for the love of God, need to make as many tackles as humanly possible. Lamar is going to get his. He's going to make someone stupid. He's probably going to take some ankles. However, just win the vast majority of these reps because we know what they're going to try and do. Now, number 2 with Lamar Jackson, we have to do our best to make sure that we keep him inside of the pocket. I really like our matchups with our defensive ends, and the right side of that offensive line. So you know for a fact that if he is going to exit the pocket, it's going to be off toward the left. If we can keep him right in between the numbers, don't allow him to rush outside, he's not going to be able to be much of a factor, and he's going to have to throw the football. So be strategic on where we end up flushing Lamar out of the pocket. He's only going to be able to do it on the left side. I'm not concerned about their wide receivers outside of Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely. With Rashad Bateman is really nothing to lose sleep over. So as long as we can contain Lamar from rushing the football, I don't trust him in being able to make big-time throws downfield, particularly outside of the numbers. Say that we do that, I feel very confident in this Buffalo Bills defense to get the best of Baltimore's offense. Now, next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens defense, who has been looking pretty uncharacteristic. I'm not going to lie to you. Largely has to do with the fact that Mike Macdonald is no longer their defensive coordinator. They're going through growing pains, but there's certainly quite a few weaknesses on this defense that I think the Buffalo Bills can exploit. But, I mean, really, just to give you an idea right now, they are allowing 341 yards per average throughout the first 3 weeks of the season. That's good enough for 23rd in the league. Yards per play at 5.7, that's 24, so it's like a bend but don't break sort of defense. Third down conversion is very, very bad at 25, and they're allowing 60% of red zone attempts to end up finishing in a score that is 21st in the overall league. Now, don't get me wrong, this team is very good at stopping the run, led by Matabuke, led by their linebackers here. And they are only allowing 2.8 yards per rush attempt. That's first in the league. And so teams across the league understand that, hence why most teams are simply not running the ball. On average, only 17 attempts for the first 3 weeks. That is number one. Rush yards per game, they are only allowing 50. That is number one as well. Where we're going to get this Baltimore Ravens defense is going to be in the pass game. And let me tell you what, folks, this team, this secondary is an absolute liability. When you have Gardner Minshew out there carving up your secondary, there's going to be some issues. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they are allowing 66.67% in completion percentage. That's 19th in the league. Yards per pass, 7.5. That's 28. Passes per game, I mean, really, these teams are going out there and just throwing it all over the team. 39 attempts on average, 31st in the league. Pass yards per game allowed, 291.7. That is the worst in the league, folks. So we know what this defense is going to be. They are making massive adjustments to try and get a new identity with Mike Macdonald no longer being there. So the keys for the Buffalo Bills offense is Josh Allen. This needs to be a Josh Allen game again. All right, I would love nothing more than this to be a game where Josh is in a baseball cap by the fourth quarter, but there are so many opportunities, man. I'm talking Stevens, I'm talking Humphrey, I'm talking Williams, their safety. I'm talking even Kyle Hamilton has been struggling from time to time, and their linebackers are absolutely grotesque when it comes into pass protection or pass coverage. So key number one is Josh Allen, just to go ahead and attack that secondary. Number two, Josh Allen, you have done a wonderful job at protecting the football. 0 interceptions on the damn season. Let's continue that. Can we go 4 weeks without a single interception? So I genuinely think outside of any massive boneheaded mistake, I think he can walk away. No one's scared of this secondary right now. And so number three, in order for this Buffalo Bills defense to play efficient football and make Lamar Jackson throw, this Buffalo Bills offense needs to pick up exactly where they have left off for the past couple of weeks. If the Buffalo Bills are scoring on each and every single drive in the pass game and scoring quick, this is going to force Baltimore to have to pass the football. And so I hate this old saying, but sometimes the best defense is a great offense, and that's the mentality that the Buffalo Bills need to put out there. So final score prediction for this game, I am going to go Buffalo Bills 34, Ravens 28. I do see the overhitting. I do see this being a very high-scoring game. You're looking at the strengths of the Baltimore Ravens, and that can exploit one of the biggest weaknesses for the Bills, and that's being middle of the pack and stopping the run. And then I also look at the Baltimore Ravens secondary versus one of the strengths of the Buffalo Bills, and that is passing the football as well. I see it being a well-balanced approach. I see us having more success on the ground than some of the other teams that they have played so far. But make no mistake, this is going to be a Josh Allen game. So 34-28, Buffalo Bills are going 4-0. Sound off in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts. This is going to be an anxiety-filled game, but I am looking forward to walking away with the dub. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And so like we said, we want 50,000 subscribers by the end of the season. And so make sure you do as well, because I'm giving my live play-by-play reaction this Sunday evening. You don't want to miss it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And before I let you go, you better always remember, let's go Buffalo.